For the Holy Bible said, Mary's boy child Jesus Christ was born on Christmas Day.
Hey, okay, continuing with Pastor Ryan's 4 proposals that he argues would eliminate the contradiction between Matthew and Luke as to when Jesus was born. I dealt with the first proposal in part 1. Let's have a look at Pastor Ryan's second proposal. He suggests that Quirinius could have governed in Syria twice, which would allow for the census in Luke 2:2 to have taken place in 8 BC. In part 1, I showed why the 8 BC census doesn't work here. I won't go through all of that again. With respect to the specific claim that Quirinius could have governed Syria twice, there's no support for that in the historical record. In fact, the evidence all points in the opposite direction, that Quirinius governed Syria once, beginning in AD 6. First, we know the names of the men who preceded Quirinius as governor of Syria. Once again, I turn to the commentary about Luke 2:2 from the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops. If Quirinius had been legate of Syria previously, it would have to have been before 10 BC, because the various legates of Syria from 10 BC to 4 BC are known, and such a dating from an earlier census under Quirinius would create additional problems for dating the beginning of Jesus' ministry. Simply put, we know in AD 6 Quirinius became, as Justin Martyr called him, Rome's, quote, first procurator in Judea, unquote, when Judea was annexed to the Roman province of Syria. An alternative question is whether Quirinius held some position in Syria below the level of governor or procurator, the legatus Augusti, as it's called in Latin, prior to his term as governor beginning in AD 6, and is that other position the one to which Luke refers in Luke 2:2. I hasten to note that Pastor Ryan didn't propose this, but others have. The evidence is against this claim, too. In 12 BC, Quirinius, who was in Rome, was appointed consul by Caesar Augustus. Consul was the highest position in the imperial government after the emperor himself. It's extremely unlikely that a man who had ascended to such an extremely high rank in the imperial government, second only to the emperor himself, would have been dispatched to some second banana position in one of Rome's provinces. The historical record indicates that Quirinius was off leading military campaigns immediately after his year as consul in Rome. Moreover, even if Quirinius did hold some position below that of procurator, governor, in Syria before AD 6, it would be irrelevant with respect to a Roman census in Judea, which, as we know, didn't occur until AD 6. Some have suggested that the text of Luke 2:2 provides evidence of a position for Quirinius below governor. The words "was governor" in English translations of Luke 2:2 come from the Greek verb hegemonuo. This is a verb form of the Greek noun hegemon, from which are derived the English words hegemony and hegemon, both of which denote dominating power. Hegemonuo means being in charge of. The word is used only twice in the entire New Testament, both of them in Luke's Gospel, as luck would have it. The first is the one we've been discussing, Luke 2:2, and the second is Luke 3:1, where the Gospel tells us that Pontius Pilate was governor of Judea. Of course, Luke 3:1 isn't telling us that Pontius Pilate held some lower-level position in Judea. No, he was the governor, the procurator, the legatus Augusti in Judea. In the same way, Luke 2:2 is talking about Quirinius as the governor, the procurator, the legatus Augusti in Syria, a position he undertook in AD 6. Finally, some who claim that Quirinius governed Syria twice rely on an artifact that's come to be called the lapis tiburtinus for support. The lapis tiburtinus, there's a rendering of it on the screen, is a fragment of a funereal stone on which appears part of an inscription. The portion of the inscription does not identify the person to whom the inscription refers. However, some insist not only that it refers to Quirinius, but that it provides evidence that he governed Syria twice. Here's what the inscription on the stone says in English. I'll present it in all caps, just just as the Latin appears. King, brought into the power of Augustus and the Roman people and Senate, for this honored with 2 victory celebrations, for the same thing triumphal decoration, obtained the proconsulate of the province of Asia, again of the deified Augustus, Syria, and Phoenicia. The inscription doesn't say that anyone, Quirinius or anyone, was governor of Syria twice. At most, it says that the individual to whom it refers, whoever that was, held 2 governorships, and that the second one was in Syria. Simply put, the Lapis Tibertinus provides no evidence that Quirinius or anyone else governed Syria twice. Some rely on an artifact called the Lapis Venetus, there's a rendering of it on the screen, a reassembled funeral stone of someone who served under Quirinius. Here's the portion of the inscription that some rely on to support the claim that Quirinius governed Syria twice. Again, I present it in all caps as it appears in the Latin. By order of Quirinius, I was also the person who conducted the census of the city of Apamea, 117,000 citizens of both sexes. No date is given for this or anything else on the stone. Apamea was a city in the province of Syria, but we know, as we saw in part 1, that Quirinius was appointed governor of Syria by Augustus in AD 6 and tasked with taking a census of Syria, including its newly annexed portion, namely Judea. This inscription likely refers to the AD 6 census. For all of the reasons already discussed, the likelihood of this referring to a census conducted prior to AD 6 is, to put it charitably, minuscule, and even if it did refer to an earlier census, the inscription says nothing about Judea. In sum, there is no reason to believe that Quirinius governed Syria twice. This second proposal of Pastor Ryan's fails to eliminate the contradiction between Matthew and Luke's infancy narratives. Pastor Ryan's third proposal is that the Quirinius of Luke 2:2 is someone other than Publius Sulpicius Quirinius. Pastor Ryan opines that Quirinius was a common name, and therefore Luke's gospel could be referring to someone else. I have no idea how common the name Quirinius was in the ancient Roman world. What I do know is that there is no evidence of another Quirinius governing Syria. Again, the names of the governors of Syria are known, both Quirinius' predecessors as well as his successors. Publius Sulpicius Quirinius is the only Quirinius in the bunch, so this doesn't eliminate the contradiction between Matthew and Luke either. Pastor Ryan's fourth proposal is that the census mentioned in Luke 2:2 was started by Herod the Great under Caesar Augustus, but finished by Quirinius. This proposal fails for a number of reasons, many of which we've discussed in detail already. However, what seems most devastating to this claim is that it doesn't reflect what is actually said in Luke 2:2, no matter how it's translated. In response to what I've argued about biblical contradictions, Pastor Ryan has opined that I approached the texts with a false certainty regarding what we know about the details. I just want to opine here that Pastor Ryan's fourth proposal exhibits a sort of square peg jammed into a round hole approach to Luke 2:2. In other words, the presumption seems to be that the Bible must be right, and its various texts must harmonize with one another, and if that means proposing an interpretation that has nothing to do with what the text actually says, then so be it. I say this respectfully. Pastor Ryan is a smart, well-educated guy, extremely nice. I like him a great deal. In light of that, I'm deeply puzzled by what looks to me like a willingness to have the Bible say what it doesn't say in order to harmonize the texts. In sum, then, for the reasons I presented in this video and in part 1, it seems to me that the contradiction between Matthew and Luke as to when Jesus was born remains. None of Pastor Ryan's four proposals eliminates the contradiction or even raises a reasonable doubt about it. Now I want to assure Pastor Ryan that in the videos coming soon, I'll return to the other topics we've discussed, textual variants for example. Thanks again for your response here.
Christmas time is here.